tampons for her, tampons for him, put some fucking truck nuts on him. There you go. There we go. Tampons with nuts attached. It's gonna sell a billion. Fuck me. Fuck me. So, how's it going? Um, Things are kind of fucking crazy right now. But let's take a break and just cool our jets for a minute, and we're going to talk for a little while. I hope you'll listen and hear me out here. First things first, as I've said before in many other videos, but if this is your first time tuning in, my name is Tara. I am a trans woman. I am 30 years old. I have been out for the last 2 years, and I have not had any procedures, but I have been on hormones, and well, everyone knows me as Tara. I grew up reading Harry Potter. I was never a huge fan. Like, I don't own any paraphernalia, but I read all the books as they came out, and I was pretty big into it for a while. JK, hope you're watching this. Before we get into it, I just want to let you know that I will admit I've not always been the best. I've not always acted in appropriate manners. I have put you on blast before for liking some of the tweets that you liked and all that shit. And I apologize for that. It was, a bit overzealous to immediately accuse you of things without really getting to know your perspective. Look, before we begin, I just want you to know that I'm not mad at you. I get it. I've been in the trans community long enough to know that there's some issues. It's just self-awareness. Every community's got bad eggs in it. Why would ours be any different? There's definitely behaviors and shit that needs to be addressed, and no one wants to do it. Everyone wants to just sweep it under the rug, and we're never going to get anywhere if we keep doing that. So, I want you to know that I honestly enjoy hearing critical opinions of trans people as long as it's not just, oh my God, you're a fucking dude in a dress. And I don't get that from you. So, no, I don't think of you as transphobe. You're just critical, and I get that. I get why. And I just want to explain to you my experience and viewpoints and see if we can come to a better understanding. So, just in case you don't believe that I am not like a lot of the others, um, I've done something that a lot of the other trans people and allies haven't. I actually read the essay. Reading this, there's some stuff in here that I do agree with, but some stuff that I don't. I'd like to go through with it together with you and go over it and tell you my thoughts and give you a bit better understanding of the stuff that I don't agree with you on. Hopefully, we can come to a better understanding and show that, hey, we can actually educate people instead of just throwing them in the fucking fire and, get somewhere as a culture, progress and, realize that everyone has a value and a life and experience that differ from our own, and we need to be patient, understanding of each other. It's not hard. I just find it really dumb that people are trying to pretend that you don't exist, that like there was no one who wrote Harry Potter. Like they're trying to fucking turn you into you know who. Like they completely missed the irony that the reason Voldemort was even able to gather the power he did was because everyone wanted to pretend that he didn't exist anymore. It's like you can't just make transphobia just disappear by pretending it doesn't exist. It doesn't work that way. It's so fucking dumb. I hate it. But anyway, okay, let's just start. I'm going to skip over some stuff. There's a little bit of just preamble. Your first point is about Maya Forstater and the philosophical belief that sex is determined by biology, is protected, and all. So I get what you're saying here. There's a distinction between people who are born with dicks and people who are born with vaginas. Like, regardless of everything else, there's still an important distinction there that needs to be just a precedent, just period. Like, here's the way I see it. I see myself as a woman as I see you as a woman, but I also see myself as male, whereas you are female. And I feel like that should just be the way we see these things. There's these people who are like, well, you can identify as whatever gender you want to be because gender and sex are different things. So it's like you can be a woman, it's no big deal. But at the same time, they're also like, okay, well, so you're male then, but you're a woman. Like, no, 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 no. I'm also a female because sex isn't real either. And it's like, well, which is it? Is gender its own thing and not indifferent from sex? And so, like, it's so fucking. I don't. It's frustrating and I hate it. Why can't it be simple? Why does it have to be this? There's a lot of trans people who just have a lot of just repressed hatred for their identity they're born into and just want to sever any connection from it. And it's stupid and they just need to get over it, you know? So here you're just recapping all the events, your perspective of it. I'm not really going to get into too much here because I can't really argue anything. Um, it seems fine. You like tweets because you want to research them. That's understandable. I'm not going to accuse you of lying because that just makes me look insane. Let's see here. Turf. Okay. Um, yeah, it seems to you that you think turfs are imaginary, and I get that you're not, because I don't believe that you are, but there are actually turfs who would just like rather see me die than just be myself. And you got to realize that, some of the people we call turfs, well, they actually are fucking transphobic pieces of shit. And I'm sorry that you've been accused of being one when I really don't think that you are, but uh, trying to say that turf is uh, a thing that we just made up to just throw at anyone who says the wrong thing, no, not so much. In practice, a huge and diverse cross section of women are currently being called TERFs, and the vast majority have never been radical feminists. Examples of so called TERFs range from the mother of a gay child who was afraid their child wanted to transition to escape homophobic bullying, to a hitherto totally unfeminist older lady who's vowed never to visit Marks and Spencer's again because they're allowing any man who says they identify as a woman into the women's changing room. Yeah, like I said, a lot of people are a bit zealous throwing the term turf around and will use it for any minor instance of transphobia. We're going to get into some of these things later on. There is some stuff here I'd like to unpack, especially about the changing rooms, and as well as someone only wanting to transition because of homophobia. There is one thing here that you wrote that I do take issue with. Ironically, radical feminists aren't even trans exclusionary. They include trans men in their feminism because they were born women. That's a really sort of way to put it. It's not well phrased and also kind of misses that a lot of TERFs, whenever they are including trans men in their feminism, they're just seeing them as like, oh, that's just a poor misguided woman who's, just been led to believe that she has to be these things, or she's trying to infiltrate the patriarchy and get male privilege. They don't actually see him as a man a lot of times. And so that's not really being accepting of trans men, you know? So your first reason for being worried about trans activism is the erosion of the legal definition of sex and replacing it with gender, which, as I mentioned, I don't agree with either. We need both terms. We have a sex and a gender, I feel like. Okay. So if you know anything about power cords, you'll know that this end is called the male end. And right here in the surge detector, we've got all these different female ports that we can plug it into. And then you just, boom, that's how it works. And I know you might be thinking, oh, so it's the role of the male to go around and just plug in its, fucking bits into females wherever it wants. Yeah. That's, okay, so here's the thing. This is a female end, and it goes around fucking plugging into things. Just because you have certain parts doesn't dictate your role. You know? Second point is kind of whatever. I can't really say anything about it. Third point. As a much banned author, I'm interested in freedom of speech and have publicly defended it, even unto Donald Trump. I get you. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump either. I don't like the man at all. I think he's the worst president that we've had. But he also has a right to be and exist. And I definitely am not a fan of how often people just like name call him all the time. Like the other day, I saw a post of this children's book. Like, it's a take on If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, called If You Give a Pig the White House. And that's fucking being sold in Barnes and Noble. Imagine if they did something like that with Obama. The fucking pandemonium. It's a horrible double standard that we're setting. It's okay to bully people if you don't like them. No, it's not. You can't just pick and choose who you get to make fun of. It's not cool. We're setting a horrible precedent for each other and for our young ones, and we need to stop. The fourth point is the main one that we're going to be talking about, I feel like. The fourth is where things start to get truly personal. I'm concerned about the huge explosion in young women wishing to transition, and also about the increasing numbers who seem to be detransitioning, returning to their original sex, because they regret taking steps that have, in some cases, altered their bodies irrevocably and taken away their fertility. Some say they decided to transition after realizing they were same sex attracted, and that transitioning was partially driven by homophobia. Right now, there are a few AFAB people who are identifying as non binary or trans men, and in a year or two from now, they're going to be identifying as women and they're going to be happier. It's just fact. It just is. I have seen it happen. I have seen videos of some detransitioners. I have even seen a trans woman detransition because he was like, you know what? I just wanted to be more feminine. I didn't really want tits or long hair. I just wanted to be soft and cute. And I don't really need to be a woman to do that. And so, like, he got his tits removed and started going by he, him again. And that's fine. He wouldn't have figured out who he was had he not transitioned first. He had to go through that experimental phase to get there. I don't know if everyone needs to experiment that way, but it's definitely different for AFAB people and AMAB people. It's a lot harder to undo testosterone than estrogen, and that's the big thing that I feel like you and me have different experiences on this. You see, here's the thing. My body was also irrevocably altered. I have facial hair that I'm going to have to get laser hair removal to get rid of. I'm tall, I'm big and broad. Some of those things I'm comfortable with, like, I like being able to pick up my girlfriend and carry her around. That's fun. But I also would have liked the opportunity to be different. Most people probably aren't aware, I certainly wasn't until I started researching this issue properly, that 10 years ago the majority of people wanted to transition to the opposite sex for male. That ratio was now reversed. The UK has experienced a 44,000% increase in girls being referred for transitioning treatment. Autistic girls are hugely overrepresented in their numbers. Now, look, I've never been diagnosed as autistic, but if you knew me before I came out, you would definitely have pegged me as being such. I have heard from people who know me personally that I have become less autistic since coming out. There's, from what I understand, autism is basically just a lack of social skill or social development. And if you can't be yourself, you're going to have stunted social skills. And that's why a lot of trans people are autistic, because we couldn't be ourselves, so we don't know how to express ourselves. So it's not really surprising that we're overrepresented. The other point about the increase of AFAB people identifying as trans men, I feel like there's a couple reasons for that. For one, visibility for trans men up until a few years ago was practically zero. I had no idea that trans men were even a thing until like 2012, when this person I saw online came out as a trans man, and it freaked me out. Like, no, you're doing it wrong. Everyone knows that women are better than men. What the fuck are you doing? If I could be a woman, I would in a heartbeat. What are you doing? Why are you becoming a man? The other thing I've seen is in the last few years, gender roles have gotten more fucked. Like, I thought we were on the way forward, but like with fucking gender reveal parties and every fucking product having to be gendered for men or for women, and it's just, it seems like it's getting harder to just be yourself because you're constantly being pushed to be more manly or be more womanly. And I could get why that would confuse a lot of younger people into thinking, well, I don't feel this way. I must not be a woman or I must not be a man because I don't want to do these things. And that's definitely a problem we need to fix. because I definitely feel like there's going to be a lot of confused people who think they're someone they're not just because they're not like other girls, you know? Parents online were describing a very unusual pattern of transgender identification where multiple friends and even entire friend groups became transgender identified at the same time. I would have been remiss had I not considered social contagion and peer influences as potential factors. So, as I mentioned, I didn't come out as trans until I was 28, but I had made friends with multiple trans people, and several of the friends that I've made have come out as trans since. We just have this natural tendency to gravitate towards each other because we have similar worldviews and ways of feeling about ourselves, and so we just end up becoming friends. I feel like that's definitely part of the reason why some trans people who are still in the closet might all, wind up together. And once one person realizes, oh, hey, I'm trans, then some people around them will go, oh, well, I feel the same way too. This makes sense. I'm also trans. However, we are talking about young people here. And I remember being young once, and definitely, I definitely changed who I was to fit in with the people I was around. I wouldn't be surprised if there are young people still doing it, even if it means changing your identity. Like, yeah, I'm not surprised at all. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a fad thing. Because here's the thing with fads, like Pokemon, it was a fad. And I was big into Pokemon before it was even a deal over here in the States. So I remember reading about it in Nintendo Power and being super excited for it. And then it blew up. And everyone was a fan of Pokemon. And then within a year or two, most people were like, if I'm too cool for Pokemon, that's for lame people. And there are a lot of people who jumped the ship off of Pokemon. I stuck with it. Years later, a lot of people who jumped the ship were like, you know what? I enjoyed Pokemon. The only reason I quit playing Pokemon was because of all the people around me thought it wasn't cool anymore, so I didn't want to do it anymore. Social pressure goes both ways. There are people who are going to do things and not do things because the people around them are doing them. And so, yeah, you're going to have people who are detransitioning because they just did it in the first place to be around the people who they want to be around. And you're also going to have people who are detransitioning because all the people around them are like, ooh, no, that's not cool. That's what lame people do. Like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. I'm not lame. I guess I'm not trans. And then years from now, they're going to be like, oh, wait, I actually liked being trans. It wasn't a fad for me. I am trans. That's who I am. And we can't throw those people under the bus. That's not fair to them. Lippman mentioned Tumblr, Reddit, Instagram, and YouTube as contributing factors to rapid onset gender dysphoria, where she believes that in the realm of transgender identification, youth have created particularly insular echo chambers. Yeah, fucking agree with you on that one. I don't know so much about the rapid onset gender dysphoria. You could call what I went through rapid onset gender dysphoria, just because once it was out, I started like I was transitioning. I wasn't holding back. And that's because I knew in back in my mind that it was who I was for years. I just didn't want to address it. And so once I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is who I am now, there was no more pussyfooting around it. I just fucking threw myself into it. Because I'd seen a lot of other trans people be like, oh, I don't know. Do I transition? Do I take hormones? I don't know. And I knew it was the right choice for me. So I just fucking went with it. Lisa Lippman had dared challenge one of the central tenets of trans activism, which is that a person's gender identity is innate, like sexual orientation. Nobody, the activist insisted, could ever be persuaded into being trans. I don't think anyone can be persuaded into being trans. That's definitely true. People can be persuaded into thinking they're trans. That's true. Personally, I think that had I grown up in a different society, in a different environment, I might not have turned out as a trans woman. I definitely wouldn't be a manly dude regardless, but I might be like a femme dude. Like, who knows? I don't know. I definitely can tell that a lot of the reason I feel the way I do about my gender and identity and how I want to express myself is because of the things I was exposed to as a kid, the people I looked up to, and if I had different people to look up to, who knows? I definitely feel like a part of who I am is genetic, but the reason I choose to express myself the way I do is because of socialization. But I also feel like at this point, I am who I am and I can't change it. I have spent plenty of time asking myself, hey, can I go back to being a man? It would be easier. You and I both know this. But the thing is, the more I think about it, it's like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to enjoy it. It's just going to make me miserable. I could be successful. I could do a lot better in life if I was a man. Trust me. But I'm just going to want to die. Like, what's the point of being successful if you're not happy? I am happy for the first time in my life because I am who I am. Marcus Evans said that claims that children will kill themselves if not presented to transition do not align substantially with any robust data or studies in this area, nor do they align with the cases I have encountered over decades as a psychotherapist. If I hadn't figured my shit out and started transitioning, I probably would have killed myself. I got very close there towards the end. I had spent a lot of my younger life questioning whether or not I was gay or trans or what, and I had decided that no, I just needed to do these certain things, and then I would feel secure and confident in who I was and my masculinity, and then I would know I was a man. And I did everything that I thought would do the trick, and none of it worked. And that's when I was like, fuck, I don't know what the fuck to do with my life. I just wasted all of it. I had so many opportunities presented to me that I just cast aside because I wasn't passionate enough about my future because I wasn't interested in me. And once I realized who I was, I actually wanted to live for the first time in my life. So, yeah, I do agree that preventing trans people from transitioning, they might not commit suicide right away, but somewhere down the line, a lot of them are going to. I firmly believe that a good chunk of the male suicides are just closeted trans people. Like, it's a big deal. If you've not lived with that kind of just crippling, just self hatred and just emptiness, you can't really understand it. Or I've wondered whether if I'd been born 30 years later, I too might have tried to transition. The allure of escaping womanhood would have been huge. I struggled with severe OCD as a teenager. If I'd found community and sympathy online that I couldn't find in my immediate environment, I believe I could have been persuaded to turn myself into the son my father had openly said he'd have preferred. Yeah, I kind of expected to read something like that at some point during this essay. There's this pet theory that floats around trans spaces that you're a closeted trans dude. I don't know if you know this. I don't know. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Maybe you're still trying to figure it out, or maybe you just aren't like other girls. I don't know. But here's the thing, I feel like you're trying to cast your own feelings or how you dealt with them onto other people, like it's all going to be the same. But it's not. I remember Colette's description of herself as a mental hermaphrodite and Simone de Beauvoir. It is perfectly natural for the future woman to feel indignant at the limitations posed upon her by her sex. The real question is not why you should reject them, the problem is rather to understand why she accepts them. I completely agree with what you're saying. I feel like there's a lot of just very stringent rules set upon women, and it sucks. But here's the deal, the reason I identify as a woman is because I firmly believe that someone like me, who's big and tall and loud, who can be a woman. Women can be whatever the fuck they want to be. They can have a dick if they want. My best friend and roommate, who is cis by the way, and identifies as cis, likes being cis, likes having tits, likes wearing dresses, wishes she had a dick instead. It's fine not to feel pink, frilly, and compliant inside your own head. It's okay to feel confused, dark, both sexual and non sexual, unsure of what or who you are. I agree with the first part of that. Um, it's fine not to feel pink, frilly, and compliant inside your own head. I certainly don't. I do not strive to be any sort of, you know, feminine stereotype because that's not what women are. Not any fucking shade against women who are. Like, I love feminine women. Some of my best friends are feminine women. But uh, women can be whatever they want to be, as I said. Uh, and yeah, it's okay to feel confused and dark and both sexual and non sexual, unsure of what or who you are. I'm sure of who I am. I'm dark for sure. I'm confused sometimes about some things. Definitely not non-sexual though. I want to be very clear here. I know transition will be a solution for some gender dysphoric people, although I'm also aware through extensive research that studies have consistently shown that between 60 to 90% of gender dysphoric teens will grow out of their dysphoria. That can't be right. I don't believe that. For 60 to 90%? No, fuck you. A man who intends to have no surgery and takes no hormones may now secure himself a gender recognition certificate and be a woman in the sight of the law. Many people aren't aware of this. I have not had any surgery. I am currently not on hormones. I was for about 2 years, but I can't really afford them right now. So I'm running on testosterone. I'm not a fan of it, but I can. It's not a big deal. It's given me a chance to work out more and really, work on my gains. As I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of lifting my girlfriend. A lot of times, what I'll do is I'll pick her up and I'll do some squats, and I've really seen some improvement because of it. And so I'm, just choosing to see the light in the darkness. But it doesn't stop me from being a woman, and any other trans person who is not taking surgery or not taking hormones, they don't stop being women either because some women don't have high estrogen levels. Like once you go through menopause, your hormone levels aren't the same. Do women stop being women once they go through menopause? No, of course not. So why are we dictating who is and who isn't women based on their hormone levels? Sounds pretty sexist if you ask me. We're living through the most misogynistic period I've experienced. Back in the 80s, I imagined that my future daughters, should I have any, would have it far better than I ever did. But between the backlash against feminism and a porn saturated online culture, I believe things have gotten significantly worse for girls. I think you're probably right about this being a very misogynistic point in history that we're in right now. I don't know that porn has a lot to do with it. There's definitely a lot of um, porn, and I've watched a lot of it. I've been watching it for many years, and honestly, I think it's gotten better. There's still a lot of girls who are being pushed into it who shouldn't be in it, but I feel like it's getting a lot better. There's a lot more women creators, a lot more independent women. I feel like the bigger issue is that we're shaming women for doing sex work. When why? There's nothing wrong with doing it. If you want to expose your body, that's fine. I've done it. From the leader of the free world's long history of sexual assault accusations and his proud boast of grabbing them by the pussy, to the incel involuntary celibate movement that rages against women. But yeah, it's absolutely disgusting that we have someone who has freely sexually assaulted women, and we're like, it's not a big deal. Let's elect him anyway. And now we've got someone running against him who's accused of shit as well, and like, whatever, we'll still elect him. Like that, it's disgusting to me that we can forgive that and just like, yeah, sure, we'll let our young people aspire to them. That seems fine. I, the incel movement, though, I'm one of the few people who actually like feels bad for incels. People think they just sprang up from nowhere, but we kind of created them as a society. Like we've had this huge push for body positivity for women, but nothing like that for men. A lot of the reason incels become who they are is because they are just so insecure in their own bodies and identity that they don't know how to just be themselves. I hate that. It's fucking shitty. Like, I'm not saying that we need to go around fucking every dude that's into them. Obviously not. I'm just saying that we need to fix our society so that these young dudes are confident in their bodies and that we have more open definitions of who we find desirable and acceptable. And so we can have dudes who are like 5'4" getting girlfriends. It's not like, oh, look at the little manlet. Ha ha ha. Like, why we gotta make fun of that? That's shitty. But yeah, I don't believe in violence. No turfs should be punched. Um, as for the men across the political spectrum seem to agree, women asking for trouble. I've not experienced it personally, so I don't know. Um, but I'm sure you've experienced it, so I'm not going to debate you here. It's also clear that one of the objectives of denying the importance of sex is to erode what some seem to see as the cruelly segregationist idea of women having their own biological realities, or just as threatening, unifying realities that make them a cohesive political class. The hundreds of emails I've received in the last few days prove this erosion concerns many others just as much. It isn't enough for women to be trans allies, women must accept and admit there is no material difference between trans women and themselves. I know you and I are different. I know we have had very different childhoods. Uh, I did not grow up as a woman. I don't have a lot of the experiences that you have had, especially in regards to periods and whatnot. That's gotta be a fucking wild thing to deal with when you're 12. I can only imagine. I get that you're trying to insinuate that one thing that unifies women experience that we don't experience is trauma. A lot of women are sexually harassed from a young age, whether it just be remarks or, you know, but there are boys who are sexually assaulted too. Does that make them women? It seems a really bad way to define womanhood is your trauma. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about here. I don't know. And here's the other thing, just because I haven't had the childhood of a traditional cis woman doesn't mean I've had the childhood of a standard cis man either. Moreover, the inclusive language that calls female people menstruators and people with vulvas strikes many women as dehumanizing and demeaning. I understand why trans activists consider this language to be appropriate and kind, but for those of us who've had degrading slurs spat to us by violent men, it's not neutral, it's hostile and alienating. Sorry about that, just need to go for a walk. I'm back now. Let's keep going. Look, this shit is intense. It is uncomfortable to talk about. Like, people are gonna be upset at what I'm saying right now. You and I both know that. Moreover, the inclusive language that calls female people menstruators and people with vulvas strike many women as dehumanizing and demeaning. Like, I get that. That's like, I just cringe reading that. Like, I don't want to be called person with a dick, like, or, you know, testicle haver. That's not, that doesn't make me happy. So I could understand why that language might be offensive to you. We're gonna have to figure this out. I agree to that. You know, definitions aren't really cutting it. Uh, Period havers doesn't seem good either. Uh, Bleeders, no, that's not good. This one's gonna be a tough one. I'm gonna be honest with you. Fixing this problem's not easy. You know what? Here's what we do. We just sell them to people. You know what? That's just the easiest thing. And then you know if you need them or you don't. I feel like that's the easiest thing. Say, hey, people, here's our new tampons. I feel like that's probably the best option. The alternative is we do fucking like tampons for her, tampons for him, put some fucking truck nuts on them. There you go. There we go. Tampons with nuts attached. It's gonna sell a billion. Fuck me. Fuck me. When you say cohesive political class, I assume you are referring to people who have similar political interests and like I don't know if you realize this, but like we have the same political interests as y'all. Like, why wouldn't we give a shit about women's health and shit? Like, duh. Uh, and like, you think I don't have to deal with discrimination? Really, bud? Which brings me to the fifth reason I'm deeply concerned about the consequences of the current trans activism. I've been in the public eye now for over 20 years and have never talked publicly about being a domestic abuse and a sexual assault survivor. This isn't because I'm ashamed these things happened, but because they're traumatic to revisit and remember. I also feel protective of my daughter from my first marriage. I didn't want to claim sole ownership of a story that belongs to her too. However, a short while ago, I asked her how she'd feel if I were publicly honest about that part of my life, and she encouraged me to go ahead. I just want to stop right here to say I am so sorry for what happened to you and to your daughter. I can't imagine, but I'm sure it was fucked up, and I hate that for you. And I'm sure you have a lot of feelings inside because of it, and I don't fault you for having those feelings. I'm mentioning these things now not in an attempt to garner sympathy, but out of solidarity with the huge numbers of women who have histories like mine, who have been slurred as bigots for having concerns around single sex spaces. I managed to escape my first violent marriage with some difficulty, but I'm now married to a truly good and principled man, safe and secure in ways I never in a million years expected to be. However, the scars left by violence and sexual assault don't disappear, no matter how loved you are and no matter how much money you've made. My perennial jumpiness is a family joke, and even I know it's funny. But I pray my daughters never have the same reasons I do for hating sudden loud noises or finding people behind me when I haven't heard them approaching. This is how I know no one's actually fucking read this. If anyone had fucking read this, they wouldn't be so fucking quick to throw you under the goddamn bus. I am so fucking sorry for what you went through. I cannot imagine how horrible it was. I am so sorry. It hurts to read it. I can't understand how someone wouldn't have sympathy for you, how someone could just throw you into the fire for a couple bad opinions. I'm sorry. If you could come inside my head and understand what I feel when I read about a trans woman dying at the hands of a violent man, you'd find solidarity and kinship. I have a visceral sense of the terror in which those trans women will have spent their last seconds on Earth, because I too have known moments of blind fear when I realized that the only thing keeping me alive was the shaky self restraint of my attacker. I believe the majority of trans identified people not only pose zero threat to others, but are vulnerable for all the reasons I've outlined. Trans people need and deserve protection. Like women, they're most likely to be killed by sexual partners. Trans women who work in the sex industry, particularly trans women of color, are at particular risk. Like every other domestic abuse and sexual assault survivor I know, I feel nothing but empathy and solidarity with trans women who've been abused by men. There's nothing for me to say here. So I want trans women to be safe. At the same time, I do not want to make natal girls and women less safe. When you throw open the doors of bathrooms and changing rooms to any man who believes or feels he's a woman, and as I've said, gender confirmation certificates may now be granted without any need for surgery or hormones, then you open the door to any and all men who wish to come inside. That is the simple truth. I get your concern. There is a YouTuber I used to follow who I still keep up with who lives in California, and it's the same way there. He is registered as a female in California, despite the fact that he has a beard and like does not try to be a woman at all. And that's definitely unsettling that it's that easy and that exploitable, but I don't know how much is to actually be gained from it, especially when you realize that the people who would use it to break the law, they're already going to break the law. Whoever abused you, it was illegal for them to do that, and they did it. They don't care about what is and isn't legal. If they want to hurt somebody, they're going to do it. And having a certificate isn't really going to, because like how much is the certificate actually going to help them in the long run? Like they abuse someone and then it gets reported and then they go, "Oh, well, I had a certificate." And I go, "Oh, well, okay then. You're allowed to." No, as a serious as a point that is, it's also kind of a dumb one. But you see, here's the biggest problem with the arguments you just made. Imagine that you just made that same argument for segregating black and white bathrooms. Like white people in one bathroom, black people in another. Imagine you use that same defense. Isn't that fucking racist? On Saturday morning, I read that the Scottish Government is proceeding with its controversial gender recognition plans, which will in effect mean that all a man needs to become a woman is to say he is one. To use a very contemporary word, I was triggered. I spent much of Saturday in a very dark place inside my head as memories of a very serious sexual assault I suffered in my 20s recurred on a loop. That assault happened at a time and in a space where I was vulnerable, and a man capitalized on an opportunity. I couldn't shut out those memories, and I was finding it hard to contain my anger and disappointment about the way I believe my government is playing fast and loose with women's and girls' safety. It was illegal for him to do it, and he still abused you. Abusers don't care about what is and isn't legal, or else they wouldn't abuse people. I forgot the first rule of Twitter: never ever expect a nuanced conversation, and reacted to what I felt was degrading language about women. I spoke up about the importance of sex and have been paying the price ever since. I was transphobic, I was a cunt, a bitch, a turf. I deserved canceling, punching, and death. "You are Voldemort," said one person, clearly feeling this was the only language I'd understand. As I mentioned, they've now decided you are he who or she who must not be named. So, yeah, the fucking irony. I can't fucking believe it. It would be so much easier to tweet the approved hashtags because of course trans right are human rights and of course trans lives matter. Scoop up the woke cookies and bask in a virtue signaling afterglow. There's joy, relief, and safety in conformity. As Simone de Beauvoir also wrote, without a doubt, it is more comfortable to endure blind bondage than to work for one's liberation. The dead, too, are better suited to the earth than the living. I get it. I hate cancel culture, too. As I have said, I hate virtue signaling. I hate all the fake wokeness. I have had so many people rush to my aid and give me, "Oh my God, are you okay? Do you fucking like if you misgender me, it's not that big a deal, I promise." But I have had people get like so fucking like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I just said you guys. I didn't. It's cool that you guys and you gals. I'll just be like that. I'm so sorry. Don't kill me." It's so infuriating, and I get so sick and tired of it. I get that you care about me, and I truly appreciate it. I truly appreciate there are so many people who would throw you in the fire, the creator of one of their most beloved pieces of childhood. They would discard you for me, and that means a lot. Like, honestly, I'm like, I'm touched. But they don't need to. I'm not mad. They, we're cool. Huge numbers of women are justifiably terrified by the trans activists. I know this because so many have got in touch with me to tell their stories. They're afraid of doxing, of losing their jobs or their livelihoods, and of violence. You were right, but endlessly unpleasant as its constant targeting of me has been, I refuse to bow down to a movement that I believe is doing demonstrable harm and seeking to erode women as a political and biological class and offering cover to predators like few before it. I stand alongside the brave women and men, gay, straight, and trans, who are standing up for freedom of speech and thought and for the rights and safety of some of the most vulnerable in our society: young gay kids, fragile teenagers, and women who are reliant and wish to retain their single sex spaces. Polls show those women are in the vast majority and exclude only those privileged or lucky enough never to have come up against male violence or sexual assault, and who have never troubled to educate themselves on how prevalent it is. I agree with you 100%. However, we're not men. Even like, see, here's the thing. Even if you see me as a because I as a trans woman am attracted to women, so you think, oh well, that's just a straight dude. But I'm dating a trans woman, and I see her as a woman because I'm into women, and I only date women, so that's why I'm dating her. And so that makes me gay because we're both trans women. So, like, does that make any sense at all to you? Probably not. The supreme irony is that the attempt to silence women with the word turf may have pushed more young women towards radical feminism than the movements seen in decades. I 100% agree. As I said earlier, they want to turn you into Lord Voldemort, and it's just so fucking. Look, you did a great job of building a very interesting world, but clearly you did a very shitty job of portraying your story's symbolism to your audience, because if they can't understand what they're doing right now, they very clearly weren't paying attention. My guess, most of them were just so busy focusing on, oh my god, I can't wait for my owl to arrive, to actually give a shit about what was going on. Anyway, the last thing I want to say is this. I haven't written this essay in the hopes that anybody will get out a violin from me, not even a teeny weeny one. I'm extraordinarily fortunate. I'm a survivor, certainly not a victim. I've only mentioned my past because, like every other human being on this planet, I have a complex backstory which shapes my fears, my interests, and my opinions. I never forget that inner complexity when I'm creating a fictional character, and I certainly never forget it when it comes to trans people. I feel like I've been very fortunate in my transition. I've had a lot of people very close to me who have accepted me for who I am. I am less advantaged than I was beforehand, but I have found happiness. I know who I am. And there are a lot of trans people who still haven't figured that out yet. They're all just trying to fit in still. This is going to sound really bad, but I have noticed that there are basically two types of trans people. There are those that live online, and then there are those of us who live in the real world. There's a big gap in how the two behave. When you don't feel accepted into the community as a whole, when you don't feel like you can be accepted by the people around you in your town, you feel very cut off. And when you find a group of people online who are willing to accept you, then you are going to fight for them because you don't want to lose them when they're all you've got. And for a lot of trans people, that's all they've got. They might know a few people around them, but there's this trend where trans people become friends with a bunch of other trans people on Facebook, ones they've never met before who live in cities thousands of miles away in different continents, what the fuck ever. And you just kind of shit post with each other, sharing memes, whatever, but you also get to see each other's lives a little bit. And I've seen a lot of them just being miserable. I guess what I'm saying is that I see a pretty clear correlation between the difficulty a trans person has in making friends and the likeliness that they engage in cancel culture, and it can't be coincidental. If I was to throw away every person who's ever called me he, I would have no one left. I feel like whether people realize it or not, everyone's got an idol that they worship, whether it be their religion or maybe a celebrity that they like or an ideology. Everyone's got something. Like even atheists. There are some atheists whose entire like they idolize atheism. Like they get their dicks hard for atheism. And there are a lot of trans people who treat their identity as that idol. Like they idolize their transness, and any attacks on transness on their identity, it's blasphemy, it's heresy, and it must be purged. Uh, and that's no way to live. See, part of the reason I'm different, I genuinely believe this, is because I consider myself a Christian. I was raised in church, and I swear I sin a lot, but I try to be the best person I can be because I firmly believe in everything that Jesus taught. I don't believe in heaven or hell, but I firmly believe in everything that Jesus taught. And that's why I'm not going to cancel you, because let he who hasn't sinned cast the first stone. I've said problematic shit. I've had bad opinions. I'm not going to fault you for saying the wrong thing, JK. I want to help you. I want to educate you. I want you to understand me because that's how we're going to move forward. I can't force you to validate me. I can't force you to see me as a woman. I just have to let you see me. And I feel like that's the problem a lot of trans people have. They think that the right certificate, the right gender change marker, the right surgery, one of those things, that's going to be what makes them their gender that they want to be. But it's not. That's You're going to be the gender you want to be when you wake up and you know that you are who you are. Like that's just the best way to explain it. I know I'm a woman. I don't need everyone else to see it to know it. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you don't see it. I don't fucking care. My girlfriend sees it, my best friend sees it, my other friends see it, my sister sees it, my brother sees it. My mom doesn't, but I never liked her. My dad's dead. Trust me, JK, I get it. I got blocked by a friend that I truly cared about a few weeks ago just for expressing some of the exact same points that you made in this letter. And I still stand by all of them. And I know that blocking me wasn't going to help me change my opinions. And I know that canceling you isn't going to help you change yours. And I know how much it hurt to be blocked by them, how shitty it made me feel. It made me feel like a monster. And I can't imagine how shitty it must feel for you that so many people who once looked up to you are willing to just throw you away um, and just believe that you have no value at all to society, that we can just discard you. people aren't disposable. We can't just throw people away every time they act out of line. That's not how it works. We can't do that. So I'm really sorry, and I hope this gets fixed and doesn't do any long term damage to you. You don't deserve this. I don't know what better way to end this video than just reading this last little bit. All I'm asking, all I want, is for similar empathy, similar understanding to be extended to the many millions of women whose sole crime is wanting their concerns to be heard without receiving threats and abuse. I'm sorry.